Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Trevor Grant. I'm the founder and chief cheerleader of Revenue Hub, and I'd like to welcome all of you for tuning in to day one of this two-day event titled Revenue Management Technology, Leadership and Data Science. Today is focused on the data science, and we have some wonderful speakers joining us from Libra, Atomize, Beyond Price, Pace Revenue, and Ideas. I'd like to thank all five of you for joining us today. And if I can invite each of you to introduce yourself, that would be appreciated. I think we'll start off with, if we could start, Libra, as you've been a key leader of pulling this event together. It seems only right and fair that we start with Fulvio. Fulvio, if you could give us an introduction, that would be great.
Hi, hello, good evening. My name is Fulvio Laggionetti. I'm the CEO of Libra Tech, which is part of the wider Security Group, and also I'm head of data science within this company. That's all.
Okay, perfect. And if we can then move over to David at Pace Revenue, please.
Hi, thanks Trevor, and thanks Libra for organizing. I'm David. I'm the chief scientist at Pace. I've been building algorithms here for about 3 years for our clients. Before that, I was building algorithms in the city of London for trading, and before that in Silicon Valley for self-driving cars. And I was before that a scientist at the particle accelerator in Geneva for 10 years. And I moved over to Pace with the belief that data science has a very important role to play in many industries, and it's been showing it in many industries already, and with the belief that hospitality shouldn't lag behind, and that I could make a difference in making that true.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And if I can move to Stephen at Ideas, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Really humbled to be part of this discussion with esteemed colleagues from across the revenue management technology space. So I've had the privilege of working with many different revenue management systems. My focus at Ideas is primarily on the G3 platform. I fell into revenue management completely by accident and discovered that I have a passion for the data science or the predictive analytics side of revenue management technology, and also the data integration that's required to make those things a reality. And so I'm excited to be here representing Ideas. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stephen. And Leif from Atomize, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's a real honor to be here. So my name is Leif Jägerbrand. I'm the founder of Atomize. And as a founder, you do pretty much anything in the company that needs to be done. My background is that I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. Before Atomize, I had another company in the edtech industry where we built the revenue management systems for online publishers. And we did that for 12 years before we sold the company to an American company, and then we started Atomize, the same people. So that's me and my background.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Cayetana from Beyond Price, please.
Hi, thanks, Trevor. It's a pleasure to meeting all of you. I'm Cayetana. I'm the head of product in Beyond Price. And if I need to define myself, I'm still saying that I'm a hotelier, because I've been working for hotels for more than 10 years already. But I moved to the dark side, the technology side. So it's kind of a great movement, actually. And I've been involved of all the development of new features in our system. That's it.
Super. Thank you very much. So for the format of this event, for those that are just tuning in, we have 3 broad areas that we're going to touch on. The first will be to cover business intelligence, data science, machine learning, and AI, and to dive a bit into that. The second will be to explore how companies approach these in different ways. And the third and final topic is going to look at the future of revenue management technology. The aim, how we're going to run this event, is we're going to start each of the sessions with a broad question. We will then ask each of our speakers to answer that question, and then we'll move into a discussion based around their responses and some supplementary areas that we want to dive into. Now, to guide us through this, I'd like to thank our moderator for this event, who is Robert Hernandez. So enough from me. I'll see you guys back later on when we're doing some Q&A. But if I can hand over to you, Robert, so that you can introduce yourself and lead us forward in this great event. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Trevor, and thank you to Revenue Hub and LibreTech for putting this discussion together. It's going to be very interesting, and I think we're going to get a lot out of each of our panelists. Just give you a brief introduction as to who I am. I'm Robert Hernandez. I'm the head of Revenue Sciences Consulting at Origin World Labs. My background is in mathematics, economics, and operations research, which is the mathematics of optimization. I've worked in revenue planning pretty much all my career. I came to focus on revenue management for the hospitality industry during the last recession, the 2008 recession. I was hired by a hotel to actually work on their budget. I was very lucky that I got to, my introduction to Hotel RM was at a place where they encouraged exploration and discovery and experimenting with data. So a big shout out to the Palms Hotel and Spa for being a great place to work and grow. And after that experience, I was also hooked. So I've spent the rest of the time working on hospitality, data science, and optimization. So I want to start first of all by anchoring our discussion. As Trevor said, we're going to be very specific about what we discuss. And the biggest question that is out there looming about data science in the hospitality industry is pretty much what is data science in the hospitality industry. So I want to be sure we're able to tap into the knowledge of each of our panelists because there's so much there. We're not going to be able to get it all, but we're going to try to extract as much as possible. So to that end, there are a few themes that are most important. First, we're going to dive into the nature of data science in general. According to an online survey conducted by Libra, again, the number one question that all of you had and other hospitality professionals had is simply, what is data science? So we're going to define data science as the application of mathematical modeling to raw data. Now, that is by no means a perfect definition, but that's kind of what we're going to stick to here. Now, by mathematical modeling, we mean the application of mathematics of statistics and probability, not the mathematics, elementary mathematics of addition and subtraction. So it's a little more advanced. And the purpose of applying this kind of math is to extract insights from the data that the typical human can't find just by doing some basic math on a spreadsheet. And I think, and that is what the panelists are involved in. Their systems help us extract insights from all this raw data that we as humans couldn't possibly handle on our own. Then we're going to go beyond the basic definition of data science, and we're going to talk a little bit about machine learning, and we're going to define it as using computer power to run calculations over data to extract insights. And these calculations could be in the thousands or even hundreds of thousands per second. And the point is that these machine learning algorithms target a specific insight that we want to extract. For example, we want to extract what is the best rate that gives us the best chance of optimizing revenue for a given night. And then we're just going to briefly talk about artificial intelligence. I don't know if we'll have time to go that deep into it, but that we're going to define as the ability of the machine to do things that humans typically do. So while in machine learning, the humans are the ones that predetermine the algorithm that is going to be used, we're going to define artificial intelligence as the machine actually defining what the machine does. So given that broad scope and given the fact that there's so much confusion, I guess, in the hospitality industry, why don't we start with the basic question? Why is it that data science has taken so long to be applied in the hospitality industry? And what I mean by so long is that typically the hospitality industry has always been ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. The travel industry has always implemented on the user end, typically a lot of technology that you see first when it comes to airlines, when it comes to the OTAs, when it comes to companies that have to do with helping the guest and the traveler in their process of searching or even in their process of actually traveling. But on the back end, on the side of the revenue management, finance, the hospitality industry seems to be lagging other industries. So I want to start first by asking, why do you think that is, and what are some of the obstacles? So Fulvio, I want to go to you first. Chime in here and tell me what from your point of view have you seen are some of the obstacles in the implementation of data science?
For my experience, since I started this journey even before Libra, having worked for Brightmatch, which was one of the first companies to try to apply this kind of technology, and then in Booking.com. What I saw that the first and most important was the lack of integration with the PMS, because you cannot do anything in terms of machine learning or any calculation if you don't have the data. So this was the first important thing. So the lack of integration. Also, the second was the quality of the data that we were able to retrieve from the PMS was not very good at the very beginning. Of course, it was at the very beginning a barrier to build this kind of process on top on those kind of data. And in parallel, I would say that also from a cultural point of view, the hospitality industry has mostly been associated with something more about the buildings, the hotel management. So the cultural approach plus the technology problems. So combining these two main problems, I think you get 60% of your questions. Now, why we are so behind in hospitality industry?
I think you're absolutely right about that. I think you've hit on the three major obstacles in the hospitality industry. From the point of view of any hotel, we know that every hotel is different. Every hotel has a different format for the way they set up their rooms, for the way they recognize revenue, for the way they price. So integrating all those practices into other systems, and then obviously the quality of the data is an issue. And the culture, we're gonna double back to that discussion about the culture of is it location, or is it really a matter of optimizing on what you already have, insofar as data and guest behavior. But David, why don't you pick up on those three themes, or tell us why you think, from your point of view, that we're lagging in the implementation of data science?
Sure. I think I can not disagree with Fulvio, obviously, but I think we need to do a little bit of introspection to us RMSs. It's very easy for me to say, well, it's the PMS or it's the revenue managers, but ultimately, what I have seen when I talk to the commercial team here at Pace or the customers is that people are smart. People, when they try your product, they can see the value. They can see the value relatively quickly. But I think on the RMS space, for some time, we've been in this situation where you're trying to sell an algorithm, which is a very abstract concept, but you don't really have the ability of testing that algorithm until you're already signed into a 3-year contract with a 6 month of implementation period. So I think from our perspective of the RMS, and by the way, I know that part of the reason for those contracts or long implementation periods have to do also with what the PMS allows. But I think from the perspective of the RMSs, what we should be doing in trying to sell something that is relatively abstract, which is the algorithm, is to make it easy for customers to try it. Because in my experience, customers, once they start seeing what the algorithm can do, they can very quickly understand whether there is value being added in there or not. So I think that is an important point where we as RMSs can actually do something about it.
That's absolutely a great point. Stephen, why don't you tell me what you think about what David just said? He's pointing out the fact that in order to work with some of this technology, you kind of have to make a commitment to it first before you even see if it works or not. It's kind of the chicken and the egg situation. Are we stuck in some kind of obstacle, between how these technologies need to be implemented versus how much we first need to see if they even work at all? You think that's an important obstacle for us to overcome?
I don't think it's an insurmountable obstacle. I think that I would agree with David that in the past, sort of data availability, interoperability has maybe created some of those barriers. But I do think that some of those barriers are coming down in a big way. And I also think that implementation timelines have been reduced exponentially. And that allows people to see very quickly if they're going to get the value that they want from a system. Things like removing the requirement to set up complicated things, like helping the system understand how your business behaves. Most of those things have now been automated, meaning that implementation can be in the several days rather than several months. And I also think we should give big kudos to some of the PMS platforms. Although as an industry, we have been slower to adopt open standards for communication, data exchange, I would say that the door is starting to be blown off in some of those areas, and we're really starting to see big progress from some of the largest technology platforms in the industry in getting access to that data. I would say that still there is a barrier in some places where data just isn't available at all to specific people or for specific business problems. And mainly that's because there isn't a clear home for it. So a good example being channel costs are not often well centralized. And so solving some of the industry's longest standing problems will continue to be a challenge. But I also think that there's different ways in that implementation you have to start to think about education, because as David said, people in the industry are smart and adaptable, but applied statistics and mathematics is not an area where hoteliers typically have invested. And so it's important to think about how do we match the tools available and abstract that detail and complexity that needs to exist in the algorithms from the end user to make sure that they can reliably adopt products or solutions really quickly. And I think that also fills or leads into a big point that is trust, because we as hoteliers have gotten used to making decisions and using particular methodologies or things that we've gotten used to or expect in the market, like a particular competitor has an influence, or Friday night prices should be lower than Saturdays. And in some cases, the demand in the data doesn't support those decisions that we were making before. And so it's then difficult to start to build the trust that it might not actually be that there's something wrong with the algorithm, but we have to look at ways that we can build that confidence with the user groups that we have to make sure that the teams understand why the system might be making a different decision and how that might generate a better outcome for them. But importantly, that they can be comfortable maybe taking their fingers off the keys a little more and starting to build that trust and allowing them to focus on other tasks that are important strategically. So I think those are probably the three big pieces in follow up to what David said. Great points made so far.
Yeah, Leif, I think you've touched on some broad themes there that we're gonna follow throughout our discussion, specifically the idea of trust and the information that we're getting back from these systems. But Cayetana, tell me if what Leif said makes sense to you. Is this a technology, more of a technology issue where the ecosystem for the RMs to integrate to are still not there, or they're not up to par to where you need them to be? Or is it more of a talent issue where you need the user to be a little bit more engaged with what's going on in the RMS system? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I agree mainly with Fluvian and Stephen. I think there's too much to do still, but there's a lot of that have been done already in terms of data science in hospitality. And I think to solve one of the confidence and trust that Stephen mentioned is to still working on some metrics to get the hoteliers more value about whatever MS is offering to them, right? Yeah, we need to still working on the reliability of the data sources. all the data that need to be on the RMS systems need to be good data and the correct one. And the most difficult thing is not all data is the same for every hotel. So every hotel has a demand behavior different. So we need to adapt all the data sources to our systems to be able to make personalized decisions by each hotel, by each moment, depending on the situation.
That makes total sense, and it leads into the general discussion that I want to have with you guys, because you touched on every single point that is the most important. So I want to kind of encapsulate all the points into a basic question, which is, I think a lot of end users, when they purchase a system or an app that is supposed to have a specific function, even though RMS obviously have many different functions at the same time, but I think their expectation is that it works sort of like a GPS system. You know, I tell it where I want to go, and then it just gives me back exactly, and it should just take me there. And I think the complexity of how an RMS works doesn't allow you to exactly deliver that exact promise. So where do you think the RMS systems are? What do you think the onus should be on the user, and then, or the onus should be on the RMS system to develop to the point where it is sort of a GPS? And again, what part do you think that the user has to take up on themselves to train themselves to be able to kind of meet the RMS halfway, so that these implementations become a lot easier? So, Leif, do you want to take a stab at that, if that makes any sense the way I asked it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that has to be a collaboration between the RMS and the user, but the responsibility is clearly on the RMS. I mean, we need to make our systems easy to use. The hospitality industry, it's not tech people that drive the hospitality industry. So I think it's utterly important to make the RMS super easy to use for the user. Because especially nowadays after COVID, the teams are slimmed down. They don't have time for training, and they just want to get on with it. So yeah, I think it's absolutely critical, the user experience, to make it as easy as possible for them, and ideally over time build enough trust so they can just turn on the autopilot and instead focus on strategic revenue management instead of tactical pricing.
David, what do you think about that? Where do you think, how much does the RMS have to move towards the customer? How much does the customer have to move toward the RMS to make this?
Yeah, so Robert, I think, I obviously agree with a lot of things that have been said. I see a lot of, in this panel, we have a lot of product people. So obviously we're going in the direction of saying, it has to be very easy to use the system, which, by the way, I agree. And I think the emphasis that companies need to put on product is very important. But from the data science perspective, I think we also need to see what is the vision here. What are we trying to achieve? Where do we want hospitality to be in 10 years? And for that, I think I will go back to your definition of data science and split it in two. I would say that data science oftentimes, there is the data analytics, business intelligence, which is about what are the useful, finding out about the questions that we should be asking. And then there is the statistics, which is about finding answers to those questions. And I feel like the vision for me, where we want to be, is a place where, first of all, analytics is obvious. It's a job where revenue managers sort of evolve into being data analysts. And I think there is a lot of work that has been done there. I think analytics tools are more and more powerful. And I think revenue managers who use them effectively go to the C-suite, and they are going to be telling to the people, we should be doing this because of that. I think the other area where revenue managers need to, in some sense, get some training, but tools need to provide them with the useful the type of useful tools, or rather platforms need to provide them with the useful tools for this is the statistics. I just don't think there is a lot of that aspect of revenue management that is part of the job these days. but that's how you answer the questions. Analytics is only about what are the relevant questions for your hotel. Statistics is about answering the questions such as, is this RMS better for my property than this other one? Or, should I be pricing slightly different, my breakfast in this time of the year? Those type of questions, which might or might not be relevant for your property. And I think through analytics, you would find out if it is. Those kind of questions are the questions that you need to answer through statistics. And I think we don't have currently the tools, and we should work to provide them. So for me, the vision is the vision where the revenue manager knows analytics, has people in their analytics team, and also knows the statistics, and basically is the most best trained analytical person in the company, and can make decisions with the best amount of information and the best quality of information. And that is a vision that I think we're far from getting. But I think on the analytics side, we're a lot closer than we are on the statistics side. And I think it's our job to try to help with developing the statistics side.
That makes total sense. Fulvio, I want to ask you, what do you think about that concept that we need to, that hotels really need to try to develop not only a revenue manager, but sort of a power user of revenue science in order to be able to use a lot of this technology? Do you think that that's important before we sort of hit that tipping point where everybody starts using RMS systems? Or do you think the RMS should come a lot closer to the casual user?
Next question. I think that the revenue management is a soft science, no? So it means that there is no one theory, scientific theory that works. So it's like a soccer. It means that anyone has their own strategy. Any revenue manager has his own strategy. And of course, they are right. You cannot double check, because you cannot go into the past and double check. And the other side, we know that most of us come from the Excel world, where all the data was available on an Excel file. But now we are moving to more, like say, big data world, where the data is not so important. It's more important probably for the information you can provide, because providing information means reducing the time for them for calculations. But still, there are people that need to go deeper. So I think that the need of revenue management system is still very high. I think that meet all the needs is impossible, because of course you can do one system. But we need to do the most for creating the best information for them to reduce or save the time. And obviously, there will be part of the customers or what else that will use other tools, because we are not in competition with RMS. We are also in competition with other tools like BI, like other kind of tools that provide the same kind of information. They are perceived probably in the same way from the customers. I think that in this space we need to probably educate more in order to give them the opportunity to understand in some way the differences, because someone will be more one and the other one will be more probably the other two. So it's very complex question that needs a lot of different answers.
So that makes sense, and I want to take what you just said to Cayetana. So it kind of sounds like you have the revenue manager whose responsibility is to understand what kind of questions, like David said, what kind of questions do you want to ask? And then the revenue management system should kind of help me answer those questions. But if I want to have the revenue management system actually help me define those questions, where do you think we are on that? I'm reminded of the quote that Donald Rumsfeld used in one of the press briefings, during a long time ago. He says, there are the known knowns, And I think that in the hospitality industry is like, PMS data, your reservation data. I think most of all your systems use that. There are the known unknowns, which means that this is the data that we know we don't have. And then there are the unknown unknowns, which is we don't even know that we should be looking at this data. So how does a revenue management system allow a revenue manager to kind of define what is the known, and then what is the stuff that I don't know that I should be looking at, and then what is the stuff that I'm never going to know? How does the RMS help in that process?
I think our responsibility as a revenue management system is to empower revenue managers through both a strategic task or a strategic task and tactical ones. So in Beyond Price, our philosophy was like we need to combine both worlds. So for that, we created, we incorporated into the system some different advanced reports that allows to the user to see this kind of information that they are not really looking to the daily basis, or even they don't even notice before, so they can understand how the revenue management system is taking the decisions based on those data. So for one side, we empower them to focus on the strategical point of view, to define strategic for the hotels, while the revenue management system is taking all the decision in a daily basis. Decisions about not only forecasts, but also about not only for prices, but also for restrictions. So that is how Beyond Price or revenue management systems need to help our users nowadays.
So Stephen, pick up on the same question. How do you think that the RMS system should help the revenue manager define what the questions to be answered even are?
Yeah, I think that there's some good points being made. I think, though, a challenge we have in hospitality is we use the term analytics as a term interchangeably between prescriptive analytics, where you're feeding data into a model which is actually coming up with an answer, and descriptive analytics, which, to the points made by other panelists, is a place that revenue managers are typically very comfortable.
Can you give me, sorry, Stephen, can you give me an example of each of those, descriptive versus prescriptive?
Yeah, so I think like descriptive could be a dashboard that helps to point out the channel that's grown the most over the last 6 months. And a predictive analytics algorithm could be one where you've fed in the historical data, all of the current market data, and you've come up with a price. And I think that we as revenue management system vendors have a duty to help the user base that exists today. And that means helping them to find the answers that they need rather than to go hunting for them. And I think that that job exists in both sides, but more importantly on the prescriptive side, where we're making decisions. And I think that that's where ideas philosophy has sort of been to help in a way that was described by a prior panelist, but maybe to take the automation to the end wherever possible. So to automate all of the tactical day-to-day revenue management tasks, so that a user is not having to decide by room type, by product, what the price should be on what day, what business to accept, how to overbook, what guests to upgrade, and so on and so forth. But equally to flag to them the dates that they need to pay attention to, those outlier dates. So rather than someone having to download a 50 column wide, 100 or so row Excel book or more in many cases, and hunting with conditional formatting for the dates that have changed, the system should react to the dates that have changed and react in the most appropriate way with predictive analytics and apply the most appropriate decisions in real time. Because those are things that shouldn't just be made with business rules, but at the same time, you should still make the user aware of those key things that need their attention, either tactical things like dates that have changed by an exceptional amount, or places where either the strategy that they've fed into the system or changes that they've maybe made maybe need some review to make sure that they remain optimal. So I think that we really have a duty to serve the users that we have right now. I think I would love to see a continued investment in statistical users where they truly can understand and interrogate the algorithms at a deeper level. But at least in the short term, our goal really is to make it as simple as possible and to automate as much as possible the tasks that are much better performed by predictive analytics algorithms, and on the descriptive side to point out those key things that need attention.
All right, fantastic. Leif, can you sort of close out our discussion here on this first part of our dive into data science? Why don't you tell me what you think about how far the revenue manager needs to go towards these RMS systems by becoming more educated on statistical analysis, and like Stephen just said, predictive versus descriptive, and how much are these systems? How far do they need to go towards the customer and become more like a simple to use GPS?
Now, well, I agree completely with Stephen and his philosophy that anything that can be automated should be automated. Because, I mean, on the highest level, it's really simple that pricing has to be automated because the world is continuously changing, right? So there is absolutely no way that a human could read reports and then do some analysis and set the correct price. As a human, you simply cannot keep up with the pace that the world is running at. So anything that can be automated has to be automated. And in terms of descriptive analysis, yeah, that is absolutely needed. But what I think we will see a few years down the road is that the predictive part and the descriptive part, it's two very different talent sets. It's two completely different skill sets needed to build those different kind of systems. So I wouldn't be surprised if we down the road see revenue management companies specializing in the pricing part and other revenue management companies specializing in the statistical part, the reporting part, because I think it will be very hard 5 years from now to be number one in the world in both fields. Yeah, it's very different skill sets needed. But yes,
yeah.
for sure, the needs to go towards the user.
Do any of you have anything else to add based on everything you've heard? Something you might want to retouch on, or
maybe just responding to or echoing some of what Stephen and Leif just said. I do believe that automation is here to stay, and it was something that we from almost the very beginning were also proponents of, and we have most of our clients are running. The vast majority of our clients are running on automation. And the autopilot mode. So I'm definitely all for that. However, I do believe that analytics and prescriptive analytics or statistics or optimization, which is just a small bit of statistics that we just specialize on, but I don't think that RMSs need to only specialize on that. I think those two things are unfortunately maybe very intimately linked. Because you need good quality data to do good prescriptive analytics, and in order to do have a good optimization engine. So I think unless you become a company that just provides data to one that does prescriptive analytics, you're going to need to curate a little bit those data, and that is going to be very hard for you not to do both. So, and echoing what Stephen said, I think he's right. We need to make it easy for people to understand their data. You cannot just give them a bunch of dashboard with tons of data and say, hey, I am a 300-person company. I have 10 data scientists, but I don't know what to do. You figure it out on your own. That doesn't make really sense. What makes sense is that we make it easy for the user. But at the same time, I think we should give the user the possibility to explore those data in more detail, because in some cases it might make sense, and it doesn't come at a huge amount of cost for us.
That makes total sense. I think what I've gathered from all of you is that you're working on trying to get closer to the RM by making it more complex yet more simple at the same time, which is great. I think that's what anybody who's involved in revenue management or not involved in revenue management, because a lot of the users of your systems are not necessarily revenue managers. So it's great to hear that you guys are have the understanding that while it's hard for somebody who's from the service industry to ramp up to the level of being a statistician, it will be a lot easier if you guys the systems and what you guys are working on come closer to the understanding or the capacity of the people who we have working in hotels at this point. But we did touch on this idea of descriptive analytics and automation, and that kind of leads us straight into the elephant in the room, which is the pandemic. So the pandemic has changed a lot of the P&Ls, reservation data, and predictive data for a lot of hotels. Specifically, we don't really have 2 years of information, 2 years of previous data, 2 years of previous years information. 2020 is a total wash. We can't look at that. We can't compare that to anything. And 2021 is a slow ramp up. So we might not be able to use that as an indicator. So I want to dig into now how much do you think data science depends on historical information, and kind of like how is that? How do you translate that into how your system treats it? And for the casual revenue manager out there, what should we be doing with the data for the last 2 years? Do we just throw it away, or is there anything that we could use it? Is there any way we could use it to draw insights? And Leif, I wanted to start with you first, since you spoke last time. What can we do with the data for the last 2 years?
Keep it. It's simple. Keep it. I mean, keep in mind that AI and machine learning, it's using all the historical data is used to kind of draw a map of the reality for different market conditions. So that means that now after COVID, we have market data for, really bad market conditions. And previously we had for some really good market conditions. So it really helps to draw a clear map for the AI system of the market behavior in different market conditions. So I would say keep it, absolutely keep it. And the important thing is that AI and machine learning will handle new situations much better than a rule-based approach, because AI and machine learning it's a really good algorithm or technology for exploring new terrain, so to speak. So yeah, that's the key, I would say.
Cayetana, what do you think about that? What do you think about how we should be making use of the data for the last 2 years?
Yeah, I wouldn't say down throughout, because the COVID has demonstrated that more natural disaster can come into our lives. So we need to know how to demand its behavior in those kind of situations. But it's true that I would say as a revenue manager that we need to look into more present data, more current data than historical one. And current data means not only the current reservations, but also how is your city or the destination demand is performing, how is your competitors are doing with those kind of situations, how they responding, right? So it's not like you threw out. I agree on that, but we need to take more into the present, the current information, the current data.
Fulvio, what do you think about that approach? Kind of weigh the information more towards what we're seeing right now, and keeping the previous information in mind. You sort of put it in the position where it belongs, which is kind of informative, but not necessarily predictive. What do you think about that approach?
I agree with you. I mean, historical data is important. It is still important. We can also add in our model other data sets like forward-looking data, but in this case, even in this case, we are talking about historical data, because when you talk about searches, you talk about searches until today. You're not talking about something that has to happen yet. So this not to reinforce the fact that historical data is important, because any machine learning system learns from the past. I think it was an opportunity. This any crisis is an opportunity to explore new way to improve the forecast, to improve the analysis, building models, trying to models, get to data sources, which was very interesting at a certain point this past, and we pushed a lot in this case. Also, like as a security group, because we provide software to more than 30,000 hotels worldwide. So we centralize all those information, trying to find new data sets to give to implement on our algorithms. And I think it was a great step. We were pushed to do this step, but it was a great step in terms of literature, in terms of development. Because also when we talk about algorithms in hospitality industry, I mean there is not so much literature, anything has to be explored, because the things that we said before, the lack of data until today, the lack of many critical points was crucial. But now things that the things in terms of data flowing, data sources is improving a lot. Also, the literature, so the models are improving, and this is, I think, is a great in terms of future thinking.
So, David, what do you think about that concept that the data has evolved, the algorithms have evolved, so we don't have to be so concerned anymore about when we have these shocks? The systems will react to it. How comfortable do you feel with that statement? Is that something that the revenue manager should just have complete confidence in, or should they really be questioning whether what the system is spitting back at them is actually relevant, given that we don't have 2 years of information?
Well, I actually felt very comfortable. We did very few modifications to our algorithm when COVID hit. And the reason for that is that we consider the most important thing that our algorithm does that is different, I would say, is that it has a very clear concept of uncertainty. And I think prior to COVID, I might not have said it out loud, but I think everybody understands the importance of uncertainty, and of understanding that now it's a very uncertain month versus this month I really know what's happening, and that is automatic in the algorithm. So I think Cayetana was talking about the different weightings that you may have. If the algorithm has a concept of uncertainty, it will figure out what the right weighting is going to be. So what happened when COVID hit for us was that rather quickly, we realized that this was a very uncertain time. Our forecasts were not quite working in the expected way, which automatically meant that every night we were actually weighting the information from that night very heavily, and historical disappeared from the picture automatically. We didn't do anything for it. Last summer, on the other hand, in many places, in the beginning of the summer, we were still playing with that. But as the summer progressed, the picture that it painted for many of the properties was very certain. So the history of that summer started to become quite relevant for the algorithm, again, without much intervention. So from that perspective, I feel relatively comfortable. That said, no, I don't think revenue managers, we are at a stage where they should let the algorithm do everything without any strategic input. I think algorithms are very powerful, and in the future, maybe the revenue manager role and the algorithms will evolve to a place where there is no room for them to intervene. But the reality is the algorithm doesn't know doesn't have all the information. It doesn't know that the Dutch government has announced, not today, but when it did a couple of hours ago, that they're reversing restrictions. They're going to put some new restrictions in. So this kind of information, I think we are working hard to get some of that in, and there are some forward-looking data sources that can tell you about that. But you have to be careful because algorithms they have a lot of data, but they don't have everything at this point.
Okay, so Stephen, David mentioned that there are certain things that certain data points that his company is looking at. I want to ask you if your company deals with thousands of hotels at the same time. The other RMS systems have the same issue. From a revenue manager's point of view, if after something like COVID, how can I how can I be confident that the data that you're giving me is based on something that's specific for me and not necessarily just a reaction of your algorithm to what has been happening to thousands of other hotels from other markets that might not be exactly like mine.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that this is where the real requirement is to adapt quickly, but uniquely to the conditions being experienced by that specific property. Because as many of the panelists have said, right now there are more unknowns than there are knowns. And there are actually other similar challenges that are unique to hospitality demand that you don't see when we look at other travel sectors from the experience we gain through our parent company. At micro scale, for example, hotels often introduce disruptive promotions, or they may put a new product on the shelf for public consumption, like semi-flexed or changeable for a fee. And when you do that, you see a really rapid and aggressive shift of demand from one place to another. So there was already a requirement for specific analytics capability to handle data conditions like that at hotels, but also dealing with this in a fluid way remains the most important thing. So here you have to look for what key indicators you have, both in past performance, recent competitive set performance, but also a heavier influence on the future. So do you start to see a really rapid ramp up in terms of demand? And this is where using a really adaptive set of data that has good predictive outcomes for that specific property becomes important. So learning quickly from that wide variety of data sets and having the system decide what data sets are useful and what periods of data from those data sets are useful really helps you to improve how you forecast for multiple properties at scale. You don't want to be tweaking individual parameters or items for specific properties differently unless they have some very specific data condition that doesn't exist elsewhere. So this is a good example of where we should have automation figure out what's most important and what you can use to learn. So I think to your point, IDEAS has a lot of scale in properties, and this is where machine learning can be applied to say, out of hundreds of thousands of time series that have been applied across all of our clients, how do you see which ones best informed the favorable outcomes for forecasting for specific properties as a market went into a big disruption, as it came out of a big disruption? And that type of learning still then allows you to react on an individual hotel by hotel basis. Because in a large set, you're actually going to see things like cities often have recovered more slowly than places like lakefronts and oceanfront properties. And so even looking at multiple properties within a geographical location, you can't make sweeping decisions or apply rules. You really have to make sure that your goal remains to react to the situation at hand quickly and reliably, and to treat those hotels uniquely.
And that the answer you just gave goes leads us straight into the next session, which is I really want you guys to get into how your specific system deals with certain situations. And so I want to take a step back first and look at it from a 10,000 point view and just talk about algorithms in general and how they react. And again, the definition that we're using of an algorithm here is just a set of rules that are defined where we allow a computer to do a bunch of calculations that humans can't possibly do on their own and spit out a specific target. So, so given that definition, I want to start with Cayetana. How do I know as a revenue manager that when your algorithm is looking at information, that you're just not giving me back the same decisions that I made in the past, that you're actually looking at it from a fresh perspective, and you're looking at things that I can't possibly be looking at?
I mean, that is one of the advantages of artificial intelligence, right? That the amount of data that the algorithms can take it are huge versus the way that we did it before. So we need to stop thinking about the past. We need to start thinking about new methodologies, new ways to get the data, and how to how you say it's not the we need to include all the data that we have in the algorithms. We need to choose the correct data. We need to choose by hotel and by moment that I said before to predict and to make the most optimal decisions. So I think that's the way.
And Fulvio, how do you respond to that? I mean, the revenue managers are sitting there and they're thinking, well, if I implement an RMS system, am I really going to gain any advantage in my decision making, or am I just going to be able to do something a lot faster and more automated than I was doing in the past?
I think that so what we have to do, as I said before, it's optimize what is possible. So because not everything can be optimized, but some very time-consuming processes can be optimized. We should work very hard on this part. Then the second is another kind of situation that may happen often, very often, not quite often. It's the fact that probably it's the relationship between what you suggest, for example, in terms of pricing, and what is perceived, and the way it's perceived by the revenue manager or the person in charge. Most of the time, they are not agreed because the perception of what the system is suggesting is different, and this it's hard. I mean, because probably you have to explain why you came with those kind of results. For example, we had some clients in the city by the seaside where we were suggesting very high prices 2 months ago because we had all the searches that was very concentrated that. So we were, and this hotel was not selling anything before. And they started to say why this way is not wrong, is not right, and we said no, because these are all the information that are driving or the suggestion to this price. And in the end, we were right. I mean, now it was the only one. I mean, among the few open available with that available, and it's sold at a very high price. All the inventory. I think this is very important. So we have to take more care about the relationship between what we say in terms of statistical point of view and what the client or the hotelier can perceive. We have to fill this gap very well, probably giving them more information, giving them remove it like a black hole of the algorithm, but giving them more information. I think it's a very critical part.
David, what do you think about that? What do you think about the fact that transparency might be an issue in gaining some of the trust from the RMs or the people using, looking at these systems, getting more transparency into how the system thinks as a way of them understanding that the system is in fact doing something that they can't do themselves?
I think that's reasonable. I think I find it curious, Robert, that you make it like sound like there is a bit of an adversarial relationship there, where they are like, oh, what are you doing? In my experience, once a customer uses us for a month, they tend to understand what's going on, and they tend to be quite happy. So qualitatively, I find that adversarial relationship that you are mentioning does not exist, at least for us. But independent of that, I think it would be even better if we could get quantitative. If we could actually tell them, we made this much more money for you on, this specific experiment that we run, that would be very powerful. It would give them an ROI, and if even if we just had the capability to do that as RMSs, it would, I think, change the conversation. So I think that as an industry for RMSs, it is quite important that we develop those tools. I actually, with Trevor, who you guys saw before, we were talking some time ago about a paper that we published with Nancy Pyron, who did the RMS for Starwood, and Maxime Cohen, who has done a lot of statistical testing, A/B testing in supermarkets and other retailers. And the idea of that paper was, can we build this? How would this look like if we had such a tool? And I think it would be very interesting for everybody in this room if we could provide such a tool to the people who are thinking about using us, because then that qualitative experience which I have, which is a non-adversarial experience, it's very positive. It would be made quantitative, and it will help demonstrate the ROI and make all these conversations, go away. It's not an easy problem. We wrote this paper and it shows some of the challenges, but I think as an industry, it's a problem that we can tackle.
Okay, fantastic. And Stephen, what do you think of the same issue? How does the how can the revenue managers be comfortable with kind of the data that you guys are using to calculate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll follow up first on what was just said. So a lot of solutions, you see papers published that were really just taking full credit of year-on-year RevPAR growth or whatever the metric is that's chosen. And when Ideas built our most recent revenue management platforms, we actually took an approach similar to how airlines approach revenue management. So they can take, I guess, two different paths. You can change the plane on a route, or you can change the algorithms being applied, and those could have big impacts on the revenue you can make from a route. And to decide whether or not that's the right thing to do, they have a tool that they use. It was actually developed by MIT called Pods. And essentially it simulates, is that the right thing to do from a revenue management perspective? Now, we built a similar simulation tool and worked in partnership with academia to make sure that this was validated. And the goal of this tool is to say, I have some historical evidence when I start your property of how you did revenue management in the past. And so I can calibrate an approximate approach that you were taking in the past. And I know how my algorithms would manage that same period of business. And so you don't have to take my word for it. I'm not going to take credit for year-on-year revenue growth. And I know that the revenue manager has an impact. But I can run this simulation, and in this case, multiple simulations, to say, what truly value is the system providing? And if you had managed that same period using the approach that we're using before the system was implemented, in terms of when you restricted rates, when you changed prices, when you overbooked, if at all, what revenue benefit would you have seen from your old approach versus this one? And that's, I think, the exact type of duty of care that we have to the industry. Not to have revenue management systems taking responsibility for year-over-year growth or metrics change, because there's many things that could change there. New promotions could be run. There's marketing impacts. There's impacts from the revenue manager themselves. But we do know with those strategies in place how the revenue manager would likely have managed that business, and therefore can come up with real quantitative measures of the value that the system can provide and give more of that confidence. But I think the other approach that we've always taken is that there's a limit to when you apply a completely ML-based or machine learning-based approach as to how far you can truly regress the results and understand exactly why a decision was made on one day. Because at some point you're really just relying on the machine learning algorithm interpreting the data sets it was given for training and how best it is learning and using those. Where we also have to keep some of that regressability, so I can break down and truly understand and give tools that give users confidence into why certain outputs were given on certain days. And so I think those are two things that we have to keep a real duty of care to our users in terms of continuing to show quantitative and qualitative benefit we provide to the properties that we serve, but also in giving them confidence in the system's outputs.
And regressability, you mean looking at past data?
No, in terms of a decision on a day and being able to regress, how did the system come up with that specific output?
Okay. Looking back at the steps that it took.
Right.
Okay.
Robert,
Yes.
I feel like I have to respond a little bit to
Sure,
that.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Yeah, so I think I completely agree with the RevPAR comparisons year on year. It doesn't make sense. And I actually do believe that simulations have, which is basically what Stephen was saying, that they do a simulation, and in our case, we don't use pods or something like pods. We use an agent-based simulation for internal development of.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you want to define for our audience like what a simulation kind of looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Stephen was referring to there is the idea that you can simulate the behavior of people. So you can go in your computer and code up, there are these people that are trying to book, and they have this price sensitivity, and on different nights they have different price sensitivity, and you can derive those kind of things from the data. From your data, you can say, well, they have this level of price sensitivity. They wanted to pay this much. There were these many people that were trying to book. And then you can, at least when it's agent-based simulation, you can simulate what would happen if I am changing prices by this much or that much with this algorithm or with this other algorithm. And then you can see what kind of gains you can get from an algorithm. And, we find the use of such tools, which I don't think is very pervasive in the industry, but I think it's very useful for algorithmic development. So I agree completely with Stephen. One thing that we have found, though, is when somebody is a little bit skeptical, they might wonder what the quality is of your simulation, because the simulation has its limitations in that it cannot simulate the whole world. It cannot simulate that you have 3 competitors some days, and some days you have 2 because one is taking a lot of corporate business. So there's a limit to how complex the simulation can be, and that's where I think the statistical testing might be a complementary alternative to help with the validation of algorithms. And then on the explainability part, I think we're getting a little bit technical, but there are machine learning models that are explainable. It is true, as Stephen said, that oftentimes, neural networks in particular, which were a very popular type of machine learning model, had a lot of issues with explainability. But these days, I think the issue of explainability, if you choose the right type of machine learning method, you can handle it. So definitely explainability. I feel like if you have an expert user, you should be able to tell them, look, this is what is going on with the underlying. This is why we are making these price recommendations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it really does answer a lot of the transparency questions that we had. But Leif, I want to ask you. It sounds like different RMS systems have different approaches. None is necessarily right or wrong. Some are you guys battle against each other. But as a consumer, the majority of our audience right now probably does not use an RMS system. We are, if you're looking and you're shopping from one and you're seeing that there are differences in the different approaches, what do you think is probably the best questions to start asking in the process of looking for an RMS system?
That's a really great question. I mean, I would say first, number one is what kind of data are you using, and how close to real time is your price optimization? I mean, on our side, we believe that real time is utterly important because our philosophy is that the world is happening in real time. The world is not happening in 6-hour batches or 8-hour batches. It's changing by the second. And that means that all the data and all the price updates, they should be real time as well. Because if they are not, you will leave money on the table. So I would say that is one of the key questions to look at. what type of data are you looking at, and how close to real time is the data, and how close to real time is your price updates or recommendations? And the other key question would be, how user friendly is the system? How much training do I need? So have a look at the system, have a demo. Do you understand it by intuition, or do you need explanation to understand the system? Because most revenue managers are not tech people. We need to keep that in mind. So it has to be easy to understand. So yeah, I would say those are the key things to look at as a user.
So Cayetana, Alif mentioned data and real-time data. You want to dig into that a little bit? What kind of a data do you think that the revenue managers should be looking for in an RMS system to make sure that those systems are picking up the right data?
I mean, you mean what kind of data do a revenue management system needs to be or to take proper decisions, right?
Well, more. If I'm a revenue manager and I'm shopping for a system, what data do I have to make sure that that system is picking up for it to be valuable?
Yeah, for sure. The first one, and for me, the most important one is the current data, right? The most present data, which is your page bookings, how they are behaving. But on the other hand, for me, the second most important data is about the destination demand. So how your destination is performing, how many searches are we receiving, how many flights are we not only searching, but also receiving in your city, how is your competitors doing in terms of prices. So how there's any event that currently, obviously, there's no too many events, but now in summer, for example, in main city like Madrid, some events are coming up, so we are receiving at least national visitors. So for me, those are the most important data in terms of any revenue management system need to take into account.
David, you want to pick up on that? You want to add anything?
No, not really. I mean, we have been very vocal about what we believe is the most important data, which is the internal hotel data, which we call primary data. This has been our experience. It's not a dogmatic stance as much as that's been what our experience has shown when we look at other sources of data. We do have other sources of data, by the way. It's just that most of them are not relevant, or they are not relevant most of the time. As I say, the algorithm has the ability to use them whenever they become relevant. But going back to your question about what somebody should look at when they are using an RMS or trying to choose what RMS to use, just use it for a month, and if you're not happy, return it. I mean, don't we do that with everything? And these days, you use it, you're not happy, return it. So just do that with the RMS. I think the implementation times, as we heard Stephen just said earlier, they've gone down significantly. So, and I'm sure that a lot of people or a lot of RMSs won't hold you to a contract if you're dissatisfied. So, it's very hard to choose, because a demo lasts 30 minutes or however long it lasts, and you might be sitting with the system using it potentially a few hours a day. How are you going to get that experience without using it? So just use it, and if you don't like it, return it. Hopefully that works.
So I just want to stick with you for a second and ask you, so then what do you think are there any questions that you want the RMs to be asking you about your system in particular, specifically the data science and calculation part, that the typical RM isn't asking?
Oh, I find RMs, are very good at asking a lot of questions about the capabilities of the systems. So I think in general, I think our system has great business intelligence. And that helps us explain how the prices, why we are pricing the way we're pricing. because they can see all the data sources in one place. They can correlate it very easily. Many dashboards are built, others they can build. So I would say that, ask us how. I'm very happy when somebody. I actually sometimes jump on sales calls if somebody's really interested in how the algorithm works. Ask us how the algorithm works. Ask us how you can see how it works, and experience the platform that we've built. Really, I want them to experience it because it's not me; it's our product team who should claim. This is mostly a product question rather than a data science question. But the product team has done, in my opinion, a great job at making a good user experience, which is more, it's not so much your B2B kind of field, business-to-business product. It's more of the kind of usability that you find when you have an app in your phone. So, just use it. And if you don't like it, which is rare, but if you don't like it, tell us why, and we'll work to improve it. It's really that simple. That's why I oftentimes push very much for this idea of comparing RMS and experimentation, because for me, it's always a win-win. From a scientific point of view, for me, it's a win-win, because if we tend to do fairly well, so that's great, it's validation. But if we don't do well, then maybe the learnings are even more important. We can learn more and improve for the next iteration of the algorithm, which we are always iterating. So.
Steven, you want to kind of answer the same question? Is what do you wish the RMs would be asking about the data science within your system?
Yeah, I think that I agree completely with what David was just saying, that we would love for people to dig more and more into the algorithms, because I think that what we can see more is that it's important to understand not just what data is being incorporated into the system, but how is it being applied or incorporated. So things like the primary data set, as David said, the hotels data often remains the biggest predictor of demand, but how granularly that's applied is a big question. So, does the system separate fixed and linked business? Does it have a good way to deal with forecasting group business, either at the right level or at all? Does it deal with allotments differently? And when it comes to things like external data sources, there's lots of touting of that data being available in platforms, but users then have to decide how that data is applied. And so avoiding business rules and having algorithmically determined rules around how competitors actually impact you, but right down to the room type level. This competitor might impact your standard rooms, but not your suites. If I want to book a suite, I want that specific suite. And so there's really a requirement, I think, not just to line up the vendors side by side, but to really dig into and ask for that transparency around how are they dealing with pieces of the algorithm, how is it going to solve business problems in a better way, and what will be left manually to the user, because there's many parts of this business problem that usually algorithms have to make simplified assumptions. For example, they only optimize the base room type and then use room type offsets for the others, or they only optimize the base product and then there's lots of rules around how to price other derived products like advanced purchase or changeable for a fee. And so I think it's really important to dig into all those things, but also ensuring, as the reference was to atomize, that the system is producing decisions that remain valid whenever the system is optimizing. It can produce and update its decisions in real time across all of your distribution landscape, and that those decisions are dynamic. They're not set restrictions that are fixed until the system next updates, that those decisions can adapt in real time and will remain optimal in driving revenue as those business conditions change, especially in times like right now with COVID.
Leif, tell me from your perspective and the questions that you get asked about your system, is there anything that you would, you wish the potential customers would ask more about, or get into more about the way that your system works?
Yeah, I mean, as Steven said, I would love if the potential customers ask more details regarding the algorithm, and as Steven said, the competitor rates. That, I mean, on our side, we match the different room types to make sure that we compare apples with apples. So the more detailed questions they ask, the happier we will be. I mean, we and I guess all the other RMS suppliers, we are really proud of what we do, so we are happy to talk about it with a potential customer.
And you find the customers, when you speak to them, they are they worry more about the user interface side, or which part of the system do they typically are they more curious about?
On our side, I would say it's really different between different customer types. Some hotels and chains, they run a really tight operation. So for them, it's super important with automation and ease of use. For other hotels, other things are more important. So it really depends on the situation.
Okay, fantastic. Cayetana, I want to move to the next part of our discussion here. And that's basically revolves around what you guys are doing for the future of data science from your systems point of view. And I want this to be more of an open discussion, because we don't really have, these are the unknown parts for us. We don't know what you guys are working on. So whatever you can divulge as to, the complexity of the data, the amount of data that you're collecting, anything that you want to tell us about where do you see some of the future of this technology going?
Yeah, as a revenue management systems, we work to accompany hotels to achieve 3 main goals, actually. And that implies to incorporate, obviously, new data to the algorithms. But those 3 goals are to have the entire vision maximizing the GOP power. So we need to do that. We need to incorporate, as I said, too many other sources that we currently are working on. Then the second point is the total revenue, but also understanding to start practicing revenue management practices into other areas like restaurants, for example, or spa. So we can start being that's exactly the same as we do in rooms, but also in those departments. And the third main goal is to get personalized pricing strategies, right? And for that, it's quite important the connectivity of all the systems the hotel has. So they should be like a closed base, but all the systems need to share all the information in order to achieve that goal. So, and finally, all the system must be technologically evolved to be able to process and to get data in real time. So as Stephen and other ones mentioned, we need to get all the things automatically in real time. So that's our vision right now.
So you think the biggest challenge right now is incorporating a lot more data, or the complexity of the algorithms? What's the focus right now?
Well, it's not about the amount. I mean, it's not to incorporate all the data. We need to carefully select the correct data by each hotel. And the most difficult task, obviously, is to incorporate that data into the algorithms. So it's not like we show the data into the systems and we don't do anything at all with that. We need to take those ones to be part of the decision process. So that is our main goals. Data, as COVID show us, we need to incorporate more new information that we didn't take before, or we didn't feel that it was relevant at all. But nowadays it's more and more like historical. Even if we don't throw it out, it's not taking too many importance. So that is our two goals. More
That's
data,
fantastic.
but the correct one, and to incorporate in the algorithm for sure.
Well, that sounds good, Fulvio. What do you think? What are your customers telling you that they want to see, and what are you trying to incorporate into the next evolution of your system?
This is more related to the product, this kind of
Yeah.
question, and data science.
Yeah.
So I will speak only about the data science part. Obviously, I think that there are clear trends. Before, as we used to speak before, there was a point where there was not enough data. Now it seems that there is too much data. I think in the next future, there will be the need of the right data. to all the customers. So what I see from a customer perception is that there is a need to have all the data available in front of them. In terms of visualization, can be nice or not. It's not exactly. But what is important here is to have clear that not all the data can be incorporated into any algorithm. So having more data in terms of visualization doesn't mean that the algorithm is performing better. The same also in terms of competitors' prices. I mean, it's not always a very good data. That can be implemented into the algorithm. It's important, but not so important. So I think the next will be how the challenge will be how to match these two parts. So I mean, put the right data into visualization, educate also our customers what is good and what is not good, because too much information is not information. And the third is to, of course, continue our job in terms of exploring these new data sets in terms of searches that we are already developed as a data lake, and retrieve the most information, like which is the right price people are buying today from their perspective, from a demand side. And then analyze step by step which is useful or not, which is a job we are already have been doing in the last 6 months.
Thank you for pointing that out. We do want to keep the conversation to data science. So to that point, Stephen, where do you see the evolution of the data science functions within these RMS systems evolving in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we're going to see the evolution of data science models to take on more and more. I see change in 3 big areas. I think that things will become more guest-centric and more profitable, more automated and more connected. And so if you think about the first bucket, I think that we'll move away from thinking just about the value of what a guest will pay for a bedroom and start to think about the value of a guest's trip. And it will move away from being so room revenue management centric to making evaluations in real time of the profit of every shop request, considering more of the long-term factors around why a guest is taking this price, and also trying to think about a bit more than current basic segmentation in hotels to look at things like guests like me may pay X, Y, and Z, similar to how social media companies profile us every day. That's a really key way we can start to think differently about how we segment guests and understand what they might be willing to pay. And I think that this is a place where we've started to make some big strides in delivering profit optimization, but there's a long way to go to make it much more guest-centric and profitable. On the automation front, I think that you're going to continue to see less reliance on manual processes and much more focus where the RMS itself can flag those dates where the user needs some input or focus, be it from something from a business perspective that's changed, data quality, or strategically places that they can add the most value, especially if they look after a collection of properties. And lastly, on the connected side, I think that there'll be a move to model in any data source that users think could be valuable that is sort of occupancy based or occupancy date based and relevant. And the RMS itself will decide whether or not that data set helps to explain or doesn't help to model out the demand for that property and fold it in accordingly on a property by property basis in a fully automated way. You'll also start to see revenue management become more integrated with other departments. So things like what campaigns should I run, when, what parameters of those campaigns should exist, and that spill into other departments like operations. So things like who should we upgrade, when should we upgrade them, how close to the day of arrival, and what operational costs should we plan for when it comes to things like cleaning rooms, given how busy we are, those types of things. But I think as these options begin to proliferate in terms of what we expect from a revenue management system, there's going to be a much tighter tie between the revenue manager's role as a sort of commercial and functional leader, and therefore what you can expect to tie to maximizing the conversion of the revenue management system's decisions and the value that they offer. So I think we're going to see a real explosion in those sort of three big key areas.
So David, it sounds like the evolution of data science and RM has to do a lot with the data part and also the algorithm part. How do you rank those two in importance? Is two that have to develop simultaneously, or do you see one as more important than the other?
I think when answering the question, the first question about where we are going, I think we need to ask ourselves, where are our clients going? What is the revenue manager going to be? Because we ultimately serve revenue managers. So that's the first question, and I think we already have customers. This has already started, where the chief revenue officer of the company actually employs data analysts. And so I think we are going to move into a direction where revenue managers, what they have is they are evolving in the tools they have, the analytical tools. Currently, many of them are using Excel. Excel is not the best tool anymore. And, you have a lot better business intelligence tools, and you're going to have a lot better statistical tools. Some of them are price optimization, but there are other statistical tools. So I think our mission should be to give revenue managers, or however that title evolves over time, give them the best tools for their jobs. And that doesn't mean that they need to become statisticians. They don't need to be software developers to use Excel, but it does mean that they understand what the uses are for analytics and what the uses are for statistics, and with the right tools, they can use those to do what Steven was saying, which is, be more integrated within the commercial structure and have more of a strategic say. So I think our vision is not our vision in terms of what we want to do, but where we believe the innovators, revenue managers are going to go, which is use the best tools that they have at hand, and those come in the form of analytics and statistics and data science, and we are there to enable that. So that's where we're going to go from the point of view of data science, and the product will be there also to enable that. Of course, that's a bit of a vision, which is a bit longer than the next 3 months or a year. But whatever data we integrate, whatever new type of functionality we add, it's all going to go in that direction of trying to enable them to have the best, the most powerful analytical tools that are currently known.
Yeah, David, I think you've touched on the three main sort of themes that are revolving around this entire discussion, which is the talent and the trust, and then having the tool in the middle interacting within those two parameters. So I just want to give you guys an opportunity just to talk about those three things and how you see it falling into the data science topic in revenue management. So, tell me where you see the talent, just to encapsulate what you guys have talked about throughout the entire session. Where do you see your tool, and where do you see the issue with the trust between the talent and the tool, and what can revenue managers, or what can hoteliers in general do to make that more of a synergistic relationship? So I want to start first with Leif.
Yeah, and by talent, I assume that you mean the talent and skills of the revenue manager.
That's correct. At the hotel level, correct.
Yeah. So my view is that the revenue manager shouldn't have to be a mathematician or something like that. I believe that the revenue management system should be like an iPhone, that it can be super complex underneath the hood, but the usability has to be great. So an iPhone, it's really, really complex under the screen, but it's super easy to use, and that's how a revenue management system should be as well. Because it will take a long time to get the math people into this industry on the hotel side, if it's never going to happen. So that's why we need usability. And the tool, it's the connecting part there. So yeah, that's my view.
Fantastic. Fulvio, you want to pick up on that? Where do you see the tools and the talent ultimately winding up? We know where they are today. Where do you think is going to be the balance between both of them?
I think that now we have, the hospitality industry is not so attractive for data scientists. We have to work a lot on this. Probably for the history, I'm also an academic, so I have a lot of this story. In terms of talent for the revenue management, yes, we have to work a lot to make it more attractive. The second is the fact that revenue managers will evolve, of course, the job will evolve. I think that they will be more strategic. This is quite clear, even because we talk about artificial intelligence, but we are very far from artificial intelligence. If artificial intelligence is to try to replicate what is the human thinking, we are very far away from that. We should talk about machine learning, but machine learning is one of the features behind artificial intelligence. So the human thinking has a lot of things other than machine learning. We learn from the past, but also we have other principles like the survival principles, other principles that are common in our species that make us the difference. So it's not about artificial intelligence. We should not talk about artificial intelligence. Since any system is far from artificial intelligence, the contribution of experts like revenue management will be revenue managers will be very high, very important, because they need to understanding which are the goals, where to drive the car, and I think this is the main parts of your question.
That makes fantastic sense, David. There's very few people with the title data scientist, probably only a handful in the hospitality industry. Where do you see that balance between talent and tool going to in the future?
Well, I don't think it's going to be hard to have data scientists, in a small hotel. I don't think that's necessarily the goal. 20 years ago, nobody was making any business analytics, right? If you give people the right tools, you don't need to be a data scientist in order to use those tools. And I think analytics has come a long way. It still has a bit of way to go. So to me, again, it's not necessarily about bringing people into this industry that may not be interested. It's about giving the people in the industry the best tools for their jobs and making those tools easy to use. And I think Liv is completely right in that. But I think we also need to, automation is just part of that. It's not the whole thing. I think making it easy for them to explore their own data and do analytics is part of the story, and sometimes with dashboards that are automated, sometimes with other things that they can explore, and making statistical tools. Pricing is one of them. Pricing is an optimization, which is just one type of a statistical tool, and we can see by talking to all of us here that we've managed to make that very easy. And I think there are many other statistical tools that we can put at the service of the community, so that they become more strategic, and they become also the trailblazers in their organizations for analytics. I think, and statistical thinking. I think that is, the analytics function is very much embedded into the revenue manager. The revenue managers are the people that went to hotel school and they just love numbers. So I think they are in a very good position to do that. And if you're a general manager and you don't have the time, that's fine too, because as the tools evolve to give more power to these people, they also evolve to give more power to you. So I see a spectrum of users, and that's always going to be the case. And that's probably that's completely fine. But I just I don't see a need to bring more expertise to the community. I just see a need to evolve the current expertise, which is very Excel based, which is a tool that is 20 years old now, or 30 years old.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Stephen, what do you think about the relationship of tools and talent, and where that needs to go in order to build that trust parameter that you were talking about at the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with both Leif and David that you're going to continue to see diversity in the user community here in the systems that we are serving up. I do think that there's a need for maybe all of us, even as revenue management system providers, to continue to support the education initiatives in this space. And I think that's important in the reasons why sometimes people don't dig so much into the analytical side of, how the algorithms actually work. That, if we scratch that surface, it's important that people start to understand how and why. And in some cases where you provide more of that education, you see that it changes how people interact with the system. And I think that really leads into the fact that the tool will have to continue to take on more of that heavy lifting, more of that automation, if we're going to continue to deal with these hotel problems that just cannot be solved by simple business rules or just by solving a pricing problem. That there's a much wider problem to address. And when you talk about a revenue management system, it shouldn't just be talking about solving a pricing problem, because for most hotels, that is not where revenue management stops. That you have to think about the inventory, not just of a bedroom, but of any inventoried item that you're trying to sell. You don't go to an online store and they're just selling groceries or just selling food, just selling food or just selling clothing. They're usually selling their full types of product that they offer. And so I think we're going to see that change in the hospitality space. But to do so, we need to have tools that can ramp up supporting all of that. But I think that all ties very well back to what you were saying earlier about trust, that we have to build capabilities that allow people to dig into those exception dates so that they can build their confidence in the outputs, that we have to continue to invest in tools that deal with the simulation, as David and I talked about earlier, so that you're not just asking people to take your word for it, that you're actually taking an effort to demonstrate the value through true statistical simulation, why you're adding value and how you're adding that value. And I think that we have that responsibility to continue to support and guide users and show that ongoing investment.
That's fantastic. Cayetana, I'll give you the last word. Where do you think the talent has to go insofar as data science, and this tools has to go insofar as data science?
I agree with David. I don't think revenue managers, they don't need to be like a data scientist, right? But it's true that there are a lot of different profiles and talents into a hotel. So our revenue management system should connect with all those profiles, and they need to break down all the silos between the sales, marketing, revenue managers and different departments. So to do that, I agree it's a matter of education, but it's also a matter of how easy it is to use the system and how we are like a clear box, right? In terms of how we need to explain through the information that we are showing in the system, how the decisions are being taken. So we need to achieve that the revenue managers will be like a long-term strategic, so they're able to manage different properties at the same time, because the revenue management systems are taking the tactical decision in an automated way.
I like that. I like the analogy of the gearbox. Well, I mean, my head is already satiated with information, but believe it or not, if you guys can hang on, we got a few more questions, and I'm going to hand it back over to Trevor he has some input from the audience. Trevor, you're on mute.
Got it. Yeah, I've done the fatal error. That was on purpose, of course, just to make the point. So it's been brilliant listening in. Some of it, I admit, kind of went over my head a little bit, but that's fine. You weren't necessarily just talking to me. So there aren't necessarily specific questions coming in, but there's some interesting observations. Been a lot of comment going on to points that you've all been making, or a little cross commentary. So I'm going to try and draw some of those out into a bit of a thread. One point that did strike me as I'm listening is we've spoken a lot about the revenue managers. And obviously, we are looking at this from a data science point of view. But there are a lot, and again, let me put the caveat in. I know that with the companies present, some will focus on very different size of corporations as well. So I guess there's a question from my point is that will we see, and I think one of you might have touched on this, a delineation, maybe not the right word, but of systems that will apply to different users, different needs, and different markets? Because there is a point where I think, if I'm a general manager, do I actually, and maybe not to ask this in data science, do I need to know about data science? You know, when I want to use my GPS on my phone, I don't care how it works out the best route. It gives me 3 routes based on certain conditions I put in, and it tells me the way to go. And it's using historical data and data it knows is available possibly on that given time. So I kind of just like to throw that out. And we're not on Zoom, so you can't put your hand up automatically. But if anyone's got a comment, just throw your hand up and I'll kind of come to you. I'm just interested in your thoughts around that piece. Who wants to pick up on that one? Yeah, Leif.
Yeah, I mean, product companies in general always, there will always be different philosophies and different fits for different needs. So, yeah, I think the different revenue management companies will specialize within certain segments of our market, for sure. So the needs are different between different hotels, absolutely. And the different hotels also have different philosophies of how revenue management should be done. And I think it's important that the philosophy of the hotel goes hand in hand with the philosophy of the revenue management provider. And yeah, so there will be different targets for sure.
Anyone else want to just pick up on that? No? Oh, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, as in fact points were made earlier, that you have to match the experience with what the user persona expects. So we have users today that are general managers. They're really just looking for the tool to flag the exception dates, and then they move along, rely on the automation for the other dates. And you will have users that need to drill into in detail every or lots of the system's outputs. And I think that you need to find a way to produce a user experience where it's simple enough to meet the user persona that has simpler needs. But additionally, if you want to get to the complexity, you can still find it. And I think that's really the importance, is hiding the analytical in terms of predictive analytical capabilities, but allowing the deeper exploration wherever someone needs or wants it.
Anybody else? Robert? And then I'll come to you, Caetana.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask kind of the opposite of that question, which is, do you guys think there's ever going to be like a one formula for everything kind of algorithm that will handle any type of property optimally?
Can I first then hear Caetana answer to the question, and then we'll come back and answer yours as a supplementary? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mainly agree with Stephen and David. I mean, the RMS system need to, as I said before, they need to achieve different profiles. And those profiles are quite different because probably they're coming even from different departments. So for that, it's not only that how they see or what information they need. So our system needs to adapt as well to those profiles. So in the moment that they log in, different menus need to appear depending on those profiles. And for sure, they can also have like a general view. And then if they need more, they go, as Stephen can say they go into the details that they need, but our systems need to adapt as well to those different profiles.
So, Robert, do you want to just repeat your question just so that people could hear that again?
Sure. So instead of adapting algorithms to specific profiles, do you guys ever think they will ever achieve like one general formula of everything kind of algorithm that no matter what hotel you have, you could just plug in and play?
Can I, Robert?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think George Box, who was a statistician, I think the quote is from him, where he says that all models are wrong, but some models are useful. So I think that is part of the reason why you have multiple algorithms that can solve or try to solve the same problem. That said, I think algorithms do have the capability to serve all properties. I think properties are unique, but that uniqueness can be encapsulated in algorithms, and we see something similar in places like the search engine. The Google's algorithm is quite predominant. So that doesn't mean that there will be just one RMS running. That seems unlikely just from how companies evolve, and I think I agree with Leif there that you end up seeing, as much as it's a product dream to be able to serve all customers, the practical reality tends to be a bit different. But I don't think that's a limitation on the algorithms. I think that's a limitation on commercial aspects and product aspects.
Anyone else want to pick up on that question?
Yeah, I would like to say.
Yeah, Fulvio.
Yes, I think that the algorithm, we have a lot of emphasis on the algorithm, no? Machine learning algorithm, but I think the most important part is before, the little step before, when you prepare the data for the algorithm. That makes a lot of difference between a model and another one. It's the way you prepare the algorithm. So how do you fit the data, direct data into the algorithm? Here there is a lot of, the job starts to be much more complicated, because the algorithm most of the time it's the one. I mean, it's a formula, but the way you prepare the data can be different. You have a lot of difference, and also it's artistic, we can say, but it makes a lot of difference. And I think this is very important, and this is something that actually we didn't explore into this discussion, because we started talking about the data sources, but then we went directly to the algorithm without considering all the transformation that there is behind. Also taking into consideration all the missing points, the missing data that actually we have. Mostly, we have different situations where there is a lot of problems in terms of data entry, for example. And the way we deal with this kind of information makes a lot of difference. So data cleaning is very important.
That makes sense. Anyone else got any final comments on that? No. Okay. I'll take silence as a no. Just picking up. There was one point that was made. Liliana Sepan made a point, and forgive me if I pronounce that incorrectly, that I feel that for revenue managers, predictions are important and are going to start looking for systems that can help. They're becoming much more important. I think picking up on your point there, Fulvio, about the additional data, and we all hear about talking about forward-looking data. So anyone just want to pick up on how those systems are evolving, and how this data science, algorithms, machine learning? I've got another question to answer here in a moment as well that links into that. But just picking up on those additional data sets that are being built in. Anyone want to pick up on that? Stephen?
Yeah, I think that comes back to some of the points made earlier around how data sets are used, probably, because I think what's most important is not just throwing more data at a user or at a system. So there's now, an explosion of different types of data that people can look at, from weather to market demand. There's great tools from many vendors. Amadeus have multiple tools for looking at market demand. So do OTA Insight, so do RateGain. Many companies are coming up with these tools that allow you to see different data sets. But I think where we start to win is if we can automatically incorporate that or those data sets into an algorithm that can decide on the best way to use that data. And that's where I think you start to bridge the gap between predictive and descriptive analytics in the most effective way, that someone doesn't have to sit and decide at the most granular level how that data should be effectively used, but that automatically it can be incorporated in the most powerful and effective ways. And I think that's a place that, as revenue management systems, we really have an opportunity there to continue to push in that direction, that we don't just incorporate or show data in our platforms, but that we incorporate the data in the most robust way algorithmically, but only specifically where it improves the algorithm performance in making good outcomes in terms of the decisions made for that property. And I think that for that property is really key. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's trying to understand how that data set impacts or doesn't impact that specific property.
Anyone else? I saw some hands moving around, but I wasn't sure if that was just people getting comfortable or putting their hand up to respond. Yeah, David, go on.
I agree with Stephen. There is one saying that we used to have in the city, which is like there were a lot of data vendors and they had great data sources. And people would say, and they're trying to sell these sources, and we used to say, well, if it's that good a source, why aren't they trading it and building a trading strategy from it and making lots of money? And so basically that goes down to say that you can have a great data source that is describing something rather well, but you don't have a pricing algorithm. That takes a bit of an extra type of expertise to build. And so I think it is important to understand that just because the data source is very good and valid, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily usable for pricing or other things that we do, like inventory control or things like that. One thing that I would add, however, is that it is important to keep, because going back to the question that this person was asking, it's important to keep track of what kind of performance your algorithm has. And I think one easy way of seeing that is in the forecast accuracy, which I think since our systems provide forecasts, they should be able to show what kind of accuracy they've had in their historical performance. That's one way in which you can expose some of the inner workings of the algorithm without having to go to the more complex level of simulations, which are not really commercially available, or statistical testing, which is also at this point not commercially available.
Yeah, makes sense. Cayetana, I saw you nodding a little bit there. You're obviously sorry to draw you in, but I saw you nodding along there. So do you have a comment on that?
No, I was agreeing on that. Actually, to build kind of trustness, we need to show some metrics to our users, right? To build that confidence. And for sure, we always here, at least in Beyond Price, we also work with the forecast accuracy, and it's something that you can measure and you can show to our clients in the moment that they need it to build that. So yeah, I agree on that.
Fulvio, Leif, any comments in that? I know Stephen put his hand up, but Fulvio, you were just going to say something there.
Yeah, I think that, feature selection is very important at this stage because when you aggregate multiple data sources, of course, not all as I was saying before, not all the sources are very important for the algorithm itself. Most of them can be useful in terms of visualization. So it's very important to make this kind of feature selection before analyzing which are the most important sources that are adding information to the algorithm for any purpose. For example, flights data can be very important for hotels close to the airports. for example, that have no, for example, historical data. And in this case, can be important, but the same flights data are less important for hotels that they are located 100 kilometers far from the airport. So it's important to take into consideration both of the ways. I mean, for visualization and for the algorithm.
No, that makes sense. Stephen, I'll come to you in a moment. Robert, because let me go to Steve. Let me go to Stephen first. Stephen.
Yeah, I think one thing just to be careful with the discussion about forecast accuracy is if I wanted to produce a really accurate forecast, I could do so top down and show that as the occupancy forecast in the system. But if your forecast is truly based on a bottom-up forecasting approach at the level which solves the problems designed by the revenue management system, so pricing at a product by room type level and upgrades at the room type level, there's no way you're going to get a super accurate forecast in all conditions there. And so I think that when people challenge forecast accuracy in the industry, we should really be careful about asking more questions about what level the forecast was produced at, and are we challenging an occupancy forecast produced on the basis of applying revenue management decisions to that very lowest level of data, or is it some aggregated level of data to produce a more accurate forecast? So we just have to be careful about understanding what type of forecast we're looking at and challenging there, because the inputs to a robust revenue management system that produces more than pricing and simple inventory controls really requires a very detailed demand forecast at the very lowest level. And so the aim there is actually optimization as the goal, even if that means that your demand forecast is more accurate, but your occupancy forecast may be less accurate.
Okay, thank you for that. Robert, I'm very conscious of time.
Yes.
Robert, you got a follow-up question. There's also one question that has come in that I do want to ask kind of all of you.
I think you should go with the viewer question.
Okay, fine. Then we have a question from Pravina Thantri. And again, please forgive me for my pronunciation. In the hotel, you never know if a room that was sold at $100 was optimum or not. Could that room have been sold at 110, or would we have sold more rooms at 95? How does machine learning and algorithms train them? Okay, so who wants to pick up on or comment on that question?
I can say that that's what statistics do. You don't need to, like, we can see that I live in the UK and we have a statistical sampling of how many people have antibodies for COVID. That's very, very common. They don't test the whole population. They only test about 30,000 people, and they can still tell you that in London, 90% of the people above a certain age have COVID antibodies. So the same kind of principles can be used in order to decide that there is a statistical probability of such that at 105 you were going to sell more. I think the complexity here is that pricing is an optimization problem, and that is some of the most complex statistics that you have, solving an optimization problem as opposed to doing a simple sampling analysis, which is what I was talking about in the case of COVID. So it's normal that it is hard to understand how that might work, but that's sort of like what statistics was invented to do, to give you information about the whole without actually being able to see everything.
Okay, anyone else want to pick up on that question? Stephen, is that your... Sorry, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Leif, I'll come to you in a minute, guys.
Sorry, go ahead. Leif, you can go first.
Yeah, I can take that. So, as we spoke about earlier, it's really important to understand that the machine learning algorithms, they need to test different price points. If you always sold every single room throughout history for 100 euros, it would be very hard or impossible for the algorithms to know, should we increase or decrease the price? Well, some understanding of it based on occupancy, but it's really important to allow the systems to try different price points as well, because the algorithms are drawing like a map of different price points for different market conditions, etc., etc. So that's why after COVID we have a clearer picture for some extreme cases, and also when, let's say, a revenue manager has done a mistake historically, sure, that's not good, but the upside is that the system will learn from it. It will not do the same mistake again. So, yeah.
And Stephen, you had a point to make.
Yeah, I think this is where it's really important to challenge whether an algorithm is robust enough to deal with some of the real world challenges. So usually the real world challenges are heavily simplified, but this is where we've leveraged SAS technology to take a stochastic network dynamic programming approach to solving this problem. Now, what that means in simple terms is that the system accounts for the fact that demand has a random probability of distribution. So just like the statistics, you take a sample, you're trying to extrapolate from that. But we, of course, have a really large sample now across the client base. But a real world example might be that if you're going to offer a guest $300, they may be willing to pay $350. And algorithms really have to be able to account for the stochastic nature of demand rather than any deterministic or any training data sets into a machine learning algorithm that may lead them to be over deterministic in terms of what has happened in the past. Because the higher rate paid could either result in revenue gained or revenue lost, depending on whether or not you're correct about people being willing to pay that. And that uncertainty being folded into those stochastic optimization algorithms is really critical to solve problems like was just described in the real world.
No, that makes sense.
Can I add one quick thing, Trevor? I just want to define a stochastic, because
as long as it's very quick, because I want to hear from Cayetana and Fulvio if they have any final comments, and then we just need
very quick. It's just I think Stephen used the word stochastic, and I don't know if that's going to be obvious what that means to everybody, but that means that there is an uncertainty associated with it that is not predictable. So I think what Stephen is saying is that the algorithm needs to take into account uncertainty rather than be deterministic, which means no uncertainty.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So just picking up Cayetana, Fulvio, any comments on the question before we get into kind of wrapping up? Cayetana?
A quick one, just what we're trying to do in BM Price to solve that issues is to link the quality of the hotel value to predict, depending on the type of the profile of the client, how much money they are they're trying to pay for that specific day in that moment, right? So that is the way that we're trying to solve in terms of, or to link the hotel's quality to the fair pricing for each segment or each client that are able to pay or to book a room night. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you. And Fulvio, last comment from you.
Yes, I mean, we have to take in mind, as David was saying before, that we are talking about statistics. So it's impossible to be perfect, because it's a statistics what we do in inference. So we analyze what can be possible having less data than the reality, which is at the basis of any statistics from the drugs. As we have seen, testing the Pfizer was the same approach. It's a statistical approach. So we should. So what the forecast should do is give an ideal understanding, the range of what it should be. So giving to the revenue manager an idea of the future demand in terms of forecasting. Obviously, the more you go into detail, the more the system tend to be not linear. This can be very problematic from a statistical point of view in terms of forecasting, but I think this is the most important part.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Very conscious of time. We are overrunning, and whilst I'm sure our viewers are quite happy to hear from you guys, I'm conscious that you've given up a lot of time already. So what I'd like to do, and I'm going to kind of go round just as we can see on the screen here, it's just a final thought. You guys have been exceptional at not pitching your solutions. You've been exceptional at keeping that middle ground and talking about it. But you are here also, representing your company. So if there is a final thought or a way of people wanting to be able to contact you and reach out, we'll obviously share all of the details within it. But I just want to give each of you a chance as a thank you from us to you for taking part, to just be able to pass on any final thoughts or any ways that people can connect with you. So if I can go with Katana, be on price first.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for inviting me to this talk. It was nice. I think this is a topic that our clients and the main industry need to know and need to understand for sure to make a part of the decision process. You can reach me out on LinkedIn. I'm more than glad to answer any question that you need to know about Beyond Price or our product. And let's see if we can organize another one like that. I will be more than glad to participate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And David.
Well, yeah, thanks to all of you for this very interesting session. If you're interested in data science, just again reach out also on LinkedIn. We have blog posts regularly in which we talk about these things. So if you're interested in these kind of topics, just follow us, or I don't know, whatever your preferred way of doing this. I don't know much about social media, but and I think it's very easy to keep a scientist talking about what they are doing. So just ask a question online, and I'm sure that I'll engage, and we can have an ongoing conversation. There's nothing that we enjoy more.
Fulvio, over.
Thank you very much.
Fulvio, sorry,
It has been a pleasure. We are organizing. We organized a course in data science some 6 months ago. With more than 200 people participating. But now we are organizing another course for travel tech, which is another event in Europe, and where we will try to go deeper on this very interesting topic, because understand now is like very interesting for revenue managers also, as we said, understanding all the process behind a revenue management system and behind all those algorithms we talked today. So thank you.
Leif and Stephen, you've switched places, so I'll go to you, Leif. So leave you with the final comment, Stephen. Leif, over to you.
Yeah, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to be here. And my final advice to all the viewers would be to, first of all, you need to make sure that you have a PMS with a modern API, because that is where everything starts. If there's not a modern API, there's nothing anyone can do for you. So that's the key advice I would like to send to everyone here. And then if you're looking for an RMS, have a look at all the RMSs presented here today to make sure which one fits your needs best. I think all of us would be happy to drill into details in such a call, so don't hesitate to reach out to all of us.
Super. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Stephen, last but by no means least.
Thank you. This is a topic, as you can probably tell, I'm very passionate about, and I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to join this esteemed panel and group. So thank you. I think that my closing thoughts would be that hotels have and will continue to have more complex optimization problems that can't be solved by simple business rules or just focusing on the pricing problem. And Ideas really is grateful and continues to be grateful to all of those who trust us with your revenues. It is not something we ever have or ever will take lightly. We will continue to look to deliver flexible decision systems that provide versatile capabilities, meeting the needs of all users across the spectrum, be it simple or complex, but always looking to address all the revenue management problems that exist at that property. So we're excited to continue conversations with all of you, and thanks for this really constructive dialogue about what data science means in our industry. So thanks for setting this up.
Thank you, Stephen. And can I also thank, I'm sure we'd all like to thank Robert for moderating for us and pulling that together. So thank you, Robert. And probably fair that I give you an opportunity for any final kind of thought from you as well.
Well, I just want to thank you for including me in this conversation. And the highlight of any day for me is when I get to have a conversation with people that know a lot more than I do, and I got to have it with 5 people today. So it was fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're more than welcome. And thank you to all of you. Also, just some final thank yous to all of you who've stuck with us, all of you who may not have been able to watch it all and come back and watch the rest of it. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the comments. Final thank you in terms of to the Libra guys, and a shout out to Jennifer and Stefano, who have been working in the back, behind the scenes, with the transitions, with the communication, to try and not only pull this event together, but also to try and make it run as smoothly as possible. So I hope that when you stuck with us and watched this through, it's gone as you would have hoped, and it's been beneficial. If you're joining us tomorrow for day 2 with the leaders, the chief executives, then we look forward to seeing you then. If you can't make tomorrow, we'll keep you updated on any future events. And the sessions are being recorded and they will be up on YouTube. So from me and from all of us, I think that's called a wrap. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.